Come closer. Don't hide in the back of the room. Don't be shy. We're going to put a spotlight on everyone who comes in late. It's okay. So my name is Dr. Anna Toker. I'm a colorectal surgeon, a double board certified surgeon. I'm here to talk about something in the world of neuroscience, which I know seems not really congruent with my specialty. I am on the medical advisory board for a company called Superpatch, which is the inventor of something called Vibrotactile technology. And in my opinion, so I'm assuming many of you are clinicians, take care of patients and whatnot, you're going to see, I hope, my vision that this becomes sort of a paradigm shift in the way we take care of patients. And it sounds like a big claim, but you'll see in just a moment that I think you'll see things my way. Now, I've been taking care of patients for 30 years, double board certified, online. I do have a social media following, which seems kind of surreal to me because I don't like social media, but I do have an online wellness platform called Gut Check, where we talk mostly about microbiome wellness and that sort of thing. If you have any interest in those topics, you can find me at my website or on my Instagram at Dr. Anna Toker. VTT, so Vibrotactile technology, on the surface is going to sound a little bit like a mystery, a little bit of hocus pocus, but it is actually based on Nobel Prize winning science. And so the owner of the company has done pretty much what most great engineers have done in this world, which is take existing science that has no known application, just kind of gee whiz information, and then apply it to a human condition without an obvious solution. It's very unique in the way that it works, and we will go over that sort of in detail. So today, this talk was originally designed for people who are like the lay people. I notice a lot of you are probably doctors and whatnot, so I'll skip through that pretty quickly so as not to bore you. But what informs my opinion, what the problem as I see it in the world of medicine, the science that I'm talking about that has won the Nobel Prize, kind of the difference in medical terms between pharmacology and physical therapy. VTT is a physical therapy, not a pharmacological approach. And then I'll introduce some clinical applications. But tomorrow we'll wind up reviewing the science and then adding 2 protocols that I use in my practice for my patients using this, because I have essentially a drug-free practice at this moment. And so I know what you're asking, how does a colorectal surgeon kind of get involved in neuroscience? And this is not how. Basically, that'll be my only butt reference, I promise. So I have 2 undergraduate degrees, one in biology and one in chemistry, and it's interesting. I was a good student and I got some little national award in chemistry, and because of that, I was offered a very lucrative job for the McCormick company, and I turned it down because in my mind, why does a spice company need a chemist? Like, that did not make any sense to me at all. I thought that was a dead-end job. I didn't take it. I decided to go to an MD PhD program. When I was in graduate school, it became apparent I'm way too social to be with test tubes in a lab somewhere. So after my master's degree, I helped start the LSU Neuroscience Center of Excellence in their biochemistry lab, setting up their PCR. PCR is 1992, and PCR was a new science at the time. And then I started medical school at LSU in Shreveport, and then went on to a surgery residency and then a colorectal surgery residency. So I'm double board certified, and I started private practice in 2004. And what I was already recognizing by 2004 is that the current approach, whether it is allopathic medicine or Eastern medicine or even naturopathic medicine, we have a tendency to wait until the person is sick, falling off a cliff, and then we just wait for them to hit the bottom until the ambulance picks them up and drags them off to whatever therapy. So human beings tend to be very reflexive in their nature, and most forms of medicine reach very quickly for a chemical approach, whether it is an herbal approach or a supplement or a medicine. There's a huge role for physical therapy, and I'm sure some of y'all in here are doing physical therapy, chiropractors are doing physical therapy. But there's a difference between the pharmacological approach to medicine. Welcome, come close. Come close. There's a difference between the pharmacology and physics, and so we want to learn about that in just a moment. What I recognized in my own practice was that, as a general rule, we in the Western world are getting fatter. The incidence of ADD is going up. The incidence of autism is going up. The incidence of autoimmune diseases is going up. We all recognize this. Human beings have not experienced some genetic alteration that has led to this. There is something in our environment. And of course, the first place you want to look at is the food or the water or the environment somehow. In terms of food, and here I am a microbiologist by training and a colorectal surgeon in practice, that antibiotics and antimicrobials in our food are a significant source of a problem. So most of your health will come from a healthy gut. That healthy gut has to have a balanced microbiome. And when you introduce antibiotics and antimicrobials, well, you're making the microbiome unbalanced, and it can lead to many of these problems. So you can track all of the obesity and autoimmune diseases to an imbalance in the microbiome. There are flow agents also in foods which function as antimicrobials. And in this slide you will see, and if I can highlight it, I don't know, does that highlight? Yeah, the salt and spices are the number one reason for flow agents in the modern manufacturing. So McCormick does hire chemists, I'll be darned. Although a big news today, McCormick has made an announcement. They will no longer be adding artificial colors to their seasoning packets, which I find interesting. So anyway, my career almost went to the dark side. Glyphosate, I could talk for hours on glyphosate. I'm sure y'all could as well, but we are using an inordinate amount of glyphosates in the soil before we farm, in the soil after we farm, on the food to dry it, on the food while it's growing if it's genetically modified. And glyphosate, as you may know, is an endocrine disruptor. It kills the microbiome and has neurologic issues. So that's what we and our patients are being exposed to without our knowledge. A lot of this stuff is not written on a package anywhere. Then there's the system. The second problem is in the system. It's not just what we're being fed, but it's how the current healthcare system is going. And so any of you who are medical doctors who are dealing with insurance companies know this slide very well. This lower little wedge that's in brown, that is the payment given to physicians, which has been capped by Medicare for many years. And so no matter how many patients are in the system, no matter how many doctors are in the system, Medicare only spends a certain amount of money. So most doctors who deal in insurance have gotten anywhere between a 30 and a 70% pay cut in the last 20 years. It explains why so many doctors are retiring. What is interesting is that this black line is the cost of the healthcare system. So if we're tapering down here the doctors, why is it so expensive? And that amorphous yellow blob are administrators in the system. These are people who do coding and billing. They are the paper pushers. They do not contribute to the system at all, except to the cost of the system. So in 2004, I had 2 employees. I now have 7, which is one of the reasons I'm about to join a hospital group again. I've gone into a hospital group, came out of a hospital group, and now I'm going back in. It's very difficult to run a practice. Now, because doctors are retiring early, and I probably will retire early, there's this gap between supply and demand. If any of you have tried to make an appointment in the recent era, I know for me personally, in my practice, it could be 3 to 6 months to get in to see me. Unless you say the word, I have cancer, you're waiting. And it's just because there's just not enough of me and not enough time. Now, the healthcare system tries to make up for that with what we call physician extenders, nurse practitioners. They don't have to do as much training. They're not as well groomed, but They can triage, they can follow protocols. The problem is they're human beings with advanced training, so they ask for a lot of money. So the more you replace us with these nurse practitioners, the more they like to ask for money, and that's not actually saving the healthcare system. So enter the world of AI. Now the problem with AI, most nurse practitioners don't realize this when they're walking around with a pad and they're using AI to see patients. You are training AI how to take your job, and that's happening right now in medical schools, residencies, hospitals, in clinics. AI has already been given a license to practice medicine, and it already has the right to write prescriptions. And what's scary about that is that there's no one to sue if they do something wrong. So if the algorithm is wrong, tough titty said the kitty, nobody to sue. That's a computer who told you that. Now, a computer can't look at a person yet and say, gee, Miss Jones doesn't look the way she normally does. She must be sick. That's a human skill. When you're in practice, y'all all know that. You see a patient that you see all the time. You know when they're not feeling well. A computer can't tell you that. They need labs, they need x-rays, and they can't physically intervene. AI has no hands, so the only answer at the end of that is going to be an algorithmically generated prescription, thus enter big pharma. Okay, so do y'all see the circle we're going through? This is all headed for extraordinary disaster. This is the expenditure curve of what medicine expenditures are, and this delineates when Part D of Medicare, when the federal government decided to start spending for prescriptions, and these are projected dates and times out into the future. So really, the cost really only gets worse. What's interesting is that who's making money? Well, I just said the doctors aren't making money, they're retiring. No one wants to pay the nurse practitioners, so we've got AI. Yet somebody's making money, and that all comes down to the pharmacy industry. In 2009, in the first quarter of 2020, I was the only colorectal surgeon in the employment with United Health Group, and I know exactly how they made that doubling of their income. It's one of the reasons I no longer work for them. And it's also why they're being investigated by the Department of Justice, because it's unethical to say the least, but they know how to make their money, and that is what's going on right now as we speak, which means our society is getting sicker as time goes on. Doctors are retiring, we're being replaced with AI. Pharmaceutical industries are making tons of money. The first answer to everyone is to give a prescription, and everyone's kind of tired of that system. One of my big complaints about the medical world, and this is why I'm not an internist, I'm a surgeon, is medicine doesn't cure anything, to be honest with you. You know, it's designed to offset something that's chemically imbalanced in your body. And because that chemical reaction doesn't happen in a vacuum, there's always a side effect. And it doesn't, every medicine that is on the market is a chemical mimicry of an herbal supplement, right? So you can't make money off of nature. You can only make money off of something you can patent. You cannot patent nature. And so berberine is a great example. It's awesome for blood sugar. And so they just alter that molecule and call it metformin. And the next thing you know, they make bazillions of dollars of metformin. So it's not hocus pocus to use herbals as a first line of defense in a medical illness, but that is still using chemistry, which means you can overshoot. The person can have an allergic response to it or an over response that is unintended. And that's just the nature of chemistry. Okay, enter the world of physics, because what Vibrotactile technology is going to represent is no medicine, no herbals, there's no chemicals involved at all. It is a physical stimulant that has no side effects, no complications, and no contraindications. So it's kind of the dream first place to start. Now, to understand what it is, I know I'm going to have to go through a little bit of physics, but there's not going to be a quiz. So y'all don't worry, and I won't make it too complicated. But if you can kind of go back to physics days, the original physics was sort of like everything was solid substances, little cue balls. You know, this is Newtonian physics. There's an equal and opposite reaction to everything. Objects of motion stay in motion, and objects of rest stay at rest. These are basic laws of physics. The problem is once you start investigating things like light and sound and radioactivity and radio waves, all of a sudden, this is not a good enough explanation as to what's going on, because light can act as a wave and a particle. Sound can have a physical effect. And so they had to expand the definition of physics, and so entered the world of quantum mechanics. And basically that just says everything on the subatomic level is basically energy at a vibrational phase, right? Everything gives off a sound, and everything gives off a light, and everything has a tactile force to it. It's not as solid as you might think it is. What's important about quantum physics is that it reminds you that things can't be created or destroyed. Everything is either going to take energy or give energy, which means a biologic system, every single chemical reaction is going to let off a little bit of light and a little bit of heat and a little bit of a sound. And these things can actually be picked up in a lab. We call that biophotons. It is it's an incredibly interesting field. You can hear what a normal cell sounds like. You can hear when a cell sounds abnormal to find cancer cells. So there are some oncological surgeons who are using what they call acoustical tweezers when they do their surgeries to listen for abnormal cells, because those are the cancer cells. Anytime their metabolism is different than the baseline, it's going to have a different frequency sound wave that comes off the cell. It's kind of a fascinating field. Light is the same way. Cells will give off little packets of what we call biophotons, and these cells can communicate with each other. The microbiome within your gut communicates with all the other bacteria with these light photons. Plants in the same vicinity will communicate with each other. And so one of the reasons a garden grows better when you put certain plants in the same area is because they're communicating with each other using both sound and light. And that seems kind of far-fetched if you don't understand physics, which is why I bring it up. What's important to know is that your eyes don't have to see it and your ears don't have to hear it for it to be true, right? So when the sun is shining, even a blind person can feel the sun on their skin. So there is a way by which all the cells in your body can sense sound and light as what we call a vibrational energy. So that's not hocus pocus, that is physics. Now this physics that we're going to talk about, this Vibrotactile technology, is based on the fact that the cells can sense vibration as a tactile force and can be a mechanical force. The easiest way to think about it is kind of we're all old enough, I guess, to have seen a record player in your lifetime, right? I mean, I don't know, I guess all of us are. And a record player, you know, it's like a plastic disc and it's got grooves in it, and there's like a little arm and a little needle, and the needle drags in the grooves and it vibrates. You can't hear that. The energy goes up an electric wire and goes into an amplifier, kind of a mix board type thing, and there's a speaker that plays you the song, right? Okay. This same process is happening at all times throughout your body, and in particular throughout your skin, communicating with your brain. Your brain is the amplifier who can translate the song, okay? Every physiologic aspect of your body is controlled ultimately by the autonomic nervous system in your brain, and every physiologic part of your body has a very particular pathway in your brain. So that's just important for us to remember from our days in anatomy. So communication occurs between cells, and most of us, if you remember biology, they were talking about drugs and hormones and other cellular chemical signals, where one cell in distress or who wants to communicate releases these signals, another cell has the receptor to that signal, and then all of a sudden the cell with the receptor acts, and the cell without the receptor does not act. And we think of that in terms of chemistry, but truly there is a physical construct to this, because light and sound will also communicate in the exact same way. So that is where your brain comes into coordination. So I didn't realize that was an automated thing that just happened. Okay, interesting. This is a good slide where on the right-hand side you can see striated muscle. That is a nerve fiber with all the different little paddles. Each one of those cells is connected to a nerve. Every cell in your body is connected to just a little tendril of a nerve. Those nerves all connect into the sensory nervous system, will reach the spinal cord, and if you can remember anatomy, the part of the spinal cord is called the dorsal column. That back part of the spinal cord goes from your periphery to the central, goes up the brain to the central aspect of the brain, and your brain will then take that signal and spread it out to whoever needs it. So, for example, if I'm standing here and a spider crawls across my hand, I don't have to see the spider to know that it's a creepy crawly. It's going to freak me out. And my response is I'm going to flick the spider over there at Ethan, our camera guy, and then my pulse will go up, my blood pressure will go up, I'll get the heebie-jeebies, and the next time I tell this story, I will still have the heebie-jeebies. I never saw the thing. And the reason for this connection is because of this system. Now, how does that happen? We talked about that. And this is where the Nobel Prize comes in. About 15 years ago, a team described what we call piezoelectric channels. And a piezoelectric just means it took mechanical energy and turned it into an electrical signal, which can then propagate up a nerve. This was critical because, now it was gee whiz at the time, they won a Nobel Prize in 2020 or 2021. It had no real application. The paper doesn't really talk about how one would apply this in medical terms. It just explains that concept, creepy crawly on my skin. I felt it, and then it changed my physiology as a result. So these piezoelectric channels are not just in your skin, they're kind of throughout your entire body, and your brain will actually respond to those signals with adjustments in your physiology. You can adjust your physiology with tactile sensation to your skin is what it comes down to. Okay, so these signals, you don't need special cells, and you can have emotion, cardiovascular control, immunity, neurologic growth and development. Children who are not touched and hugged by their family, orphans, do not have the same neurologic growth as a child that's in a well-developed family, basically. Microbiome diversity and control also comes through this pathway. And so what that means is, if you can figure out how to send just the right signal from your skin to the central aspect of your brain, you can control any aspect of your physiology, is what it boils down to. That's what that paper says without knowing that that's what it said. The engineer who founded, the company's called Superpatch, this VTT technology, read that paper and instantly understood he's a computer engineer. The brain is a computer, and all you needed to figure out is what is the input. I can control your brain if I know how to input through the skin, is what he figured out. So you can remotely target the ANS through the skin. That's the most important thing that the prior 20 minutes of my talk just talked about. Okay, so biologic systems communicate with vibrotactile technology, and they do it all the time, whether you know it or not, and your physiology is being controlled by that, whether you know it or not. Everybody is all the surrounding cells can work in harmony to send the same signal, and the nerve endings act as that conduit. And the back and forth, so for every signal that goes to your brain sends out at least 3 signals out to the periphery to control your body's response. And this is the company's basically little cartoon add-on to my talk, and the technology is here. It is a texture. And that texture is programmed a very specific way to reach a very specific part of your brain to change a very specific aspect of your physiology. Now, there's another paper, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but I find this interesting for the future of medicine. Recently, this paper was published that talks about that an EEG, when interpreted properly, can predict a person's future medical illness. So before you get diabetes, your brain knows you're having a problem because your brain is already struggling to control your blood sugar. And if you can recognize an illness before the person has a symptom, then that person never really needs to develop the end organ damage that prolonged disease creates. So as a physician, we can't diagnose something until there's a disease state. And to get a disease state, you need to have end organ damage, basically. And our job is to try to find the disease state as early as humanly possible, which is why we created pre-diabetes. That's not really a diagnosis, but it's a state we all recognize. It means your blood sugar is a little bit too high, but you're not yet considered diabetic. There is an EEG algorithm, and they have it at superpatch, that can interpret through the brain a person who is having struggles with their blood sugar long before they're even diagnosed as pre-diabetic. And what that means is human disease does not necessarily need to exist. And in my world, I'd like to see that happen in the future. And this is without medicines, without a doctor, and without a prescription. What you need is an EEG, baseball cap, AI computer that can interpret that, and a 3D printer who can print the texture that goes on your skin for the next 3 months, and then we check it again. So that would be the concept. Your brain is constantly getting new normal. It gets tired of having to fix things, right? So back to blood sugar, it's the easiest one for everyone to understand. If your blood sugar is always a little bit elevated, your body eventually gets tired of trying to control that down to, like, let's say 90. So it'll reset you at 100, and then it'll reset you at 110. And then it'll reset you at 120. Next thing you know, you're 130, 140, and you're diabetic. So that's called allostasis, those step upwards. You can step that backwards with tightly controlled disease. And if you intervene early enough, the allostasis never really needs to exist. And that's the whole point. Now, the limitations is that, well, I mean, without a doctor present, there's no one who can look at you and say you're sick. There may be other things wrong with you. These patches, this intervention is not there to replace a doctor. What it's there to do is, right now, the technology is designed to take a symptom and alleviate this symptom without any herbals or medicines or any chemical intervention in a way that is safe for anyone at any age without any skill involved. You peel the sticker and you stick it on your skin and it does the work for you, basically. Okay, so the technology. And you say technology, it looks like a Band-Aid. So yeah, I know, it looks like a Band-Aid. It is an FDA Class 1 device. A Class 1 device means that it's a Band-Aid. There's no skill to it. It can't injure anyone. There's like zero risk to using it. That's what a Class 1 FDA device is. It's registered with the FDA so we can do clinical trials. You cannot do a human clinical trial with a device that is not registered with the FDA. Thus, it's registered. The FDA does not approve Class 1 devices, so it'll never be FDA approved. But that shouldn't be a reason not to think that it is legitimate technology, because your Band-Aid's not. Neither are your crutches. Your crutches are not FDA approved either. Okay, so a super patch, this Vibrotactile technology is like a 2-inch by 2-inch square. I've got 7 of them on my body right now as I speak. And it has a texture to the top of it that you can see, a little swirly patch. That's not the therapy. That texture just makes the patch very flexible. And that way, when it's on your skin, as your skin moves, that texture kind of gathers in skin sensors to interact with the real technology, which is on the sticky side of the Band-Aid. It's very fine. If they made it if they made it visible, you would know it was there. It would be annoying. You wouldn't want to wear it. So this is a subconscious level amount of texture. It's sensed by the skin. Each patch has a different pattern to it, and just like a QR code is going to take you to a different website, every QR code is different, you know, it takes you to a different website. Every one of these patches has a different code on it, takes you to a different part of the brain in much the same way. Okay, what's important, it's kind of like your QR code, if you don't have internet, the signal goes nowhere. These patches are only going to work in somebody who's neurologically intact and whose skin has sensation. These piezoelectric channels have to exist. If they don't exist because the skin is burned, there's a scar there, the person has a neurologic injury where they cannot feel something, diabetics in their peripheries a lot of times can't feel things, those people should not put this device on a piece of skin that has no sensation. If you've had a spinal cord injury or neurologic injury, it may not work because just the connection may not be there. If a pathway is optimal, working as good as it can possibly work, this is not going to help anybody, right? So you're not going to wear it just to wear it. So for example, there is a patch for sleep, REM sleep. People who struggle to fall asleep and stay asleep have abnormal pathways. This patch helps straighten those pathways out to help them fall asleep sooner, stay asleep longer. That's a double-blinded placebo-controlled trial. If you sleep like a baby and you never worry about it, you can wear that patch all day long. It's not going to change anything. You're not going to feel sleepy. It's not a sedative. It doesn't stay in your system. It's just making you normal. So if you have an abnormal pathway, it will improve it. If you have a normal pathway, just like a full glass, you can't make it any more full. It won't do anything. So that's critical to know. The other thing that's critical, though, is there's only one person on the planet who knows what the tech looks like and how it's distributed on this patch. And it's not me, it's the inventor of the technology. And it's somewhere on that patch. So to save money, you can't cut it into pieces. It's not like breaking an aspirin in half because I only have kind of a headache. You gotta use the entire patch, is important. Using two of the same patch does not fill that glass any further than it's gonna fill. You only need one. So if you really can't sleep, putting 16 of them on your body is not going to make you fall asleep any sooner than just one. That's just not how the technology works. Once you peel it off of your skin, or it floats off because you took a shower, or you're sweating, or whatever the case may be, that pattern has been destroyed. It's no longer talking to your body, and it's no longer working. So the whole thing has to be intact. So you don't want to put it on a scar. You don't want to put it on hair. You don't want to put it in a spot where it's going to rub off. Like you wouldn't want to put it in the fold of your arm because after time, it's going to lift off. So that's why I tend to wear mine underneath my clothes. If a patch is loose, it's not working. Okay, so failure of therapy. So anybody can use it at any age. There's no contraindication. There's no risk to the patient. It doesn't matter what medicines they're on. It doesn't matter what their medical problems are. The neurologic injury would probably be the only thing that would keep this tech from working. If it is not working, because in the trials, 99% of the human population will have a EEG change as a result of these patches. If you're wearing one, you're like, damn, that thing just does not work. A couple of things may be happening. Either number one, you have it in the wrong spot, it's not making contact. Number two, you misinterpreted an expectation. Like let's take that sleep patch. People will put it on their skin and think, I don't want to lay in bed and stare at the ceiling. I'll sit here and watch TV until I feel sleepy. It's not going to make you feel sleepy. That's not how it works. It's not a sedative. It's designed for when you say it's time to go to bed and you lay down and you close your eyes, all of a sudden, all the cycles of the sleep start firing in the proper direction. That's how it works. So not understanding the expected outcome of the technology can get people to misinterpret their outcomes. So just know that expectation. The joy patch doesn't make you feel like you've had 10 martinis, right? The peace patch doesn't make you feel like you've smoked a doobie, although I've never smoked a doobie, but I do wear a peace patch at all times. And it's also possible you're addressing the wrong pathway. So like some people can't sleep because they're anxious, right? You're thinking about work. I've been thinking about this. Say I do a big surgery on Monday. I've been thinking about that surgery since I met this patient in my office 3 months ago. That's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night. Not that I can't form a sleep cycle. So having the right pathway addressed is critical. So someone who can't sleep, maybe they don't need REM, they need peace, or maybe they need them both. I tend to wear them both. Okay, so that's kind of a summary of Vibrotactile technology. There are multiple pathways right now that are in commercial production that can be addressed, such as pain or sleep, anxiety, your immune system, hormonal control for men, He says the one for women is about 4 patches. It's too complicated, so he doesn't have one for women. But for men, there's a one shot to the boys for men. And I think all of us in the room know that. And for circulation, these patches can be placed anywhere at any time, really no contraindications. Okay, let's see, where did I, whoop. And so that's the number of patches we have. There's more coming. He has one for blood sugar. The problem is the FDA will not let him make the claim of blood sugar without years and years of worth of double-blinded, placebo-controlled trials, which he has the original one out. It's being published as we speak, so I'm not sure what he's going to do about that, but that's coming out and has been shown to lower the A1C over a course of 3 months. The critical concepts are that these patches are devices for symptomatic relief. Right, for right now, they're not diagnosing anything, and we're really not treating a disease at this point. We're using them as a first-line therapy over the counter, just like you, mommy, I can't sleep. Here you go. That is sort of the rationale right now, although in my world, I think we can use this in the medical world a little bit more proactively. And as someone who sits on the medical advisory board, part of my role is to start recruiting physicians to add them to their practices like I do. And I don't write for narcotics anymore, and I don't write for any anxiolytics or any of these things that a lot of doctors write for, because I use this in a holistic approach and a clean diet. Now, so that's kind of a basic introduction. This QR code, since we talked about QR code, feel free to scan. It'll get you to a website with a free download. And that's basically, it's kind of a free gift that's safe and natural ways to curb your appetite. It's just sort of a taste, whet your taste buds for tomorrow, because one of my protocols that we will have tomorrow are how I use these patches in lieu of GLP-1 agonists for weight loss. And then also the second protocol we'll go over will be for enhanced recovery after surgery. Most surgeons, whether y'all know it or not, most of our practice revolves around preventing bad things from happening. And there's no more egomaniacal group than surgeons. And so we don't want something bad happening to people. So we do set the stage in elective surgery, what to do before surgery, what we're going to do during surgery, what we're going to do after surgery to improve your outcome. And I use these patches a lot in that pathway. And that's going to be for tomorrow night. If you guys want to get your hands on a patch for a trial or like a little demonstration, we do those demonstrations with the balance patch. That's easier to demonstrate than, let's say, sleep or anxiety, right? So we do a little balance test that if y'all want to participate in. Booth 103, right when you walk into the thing to your left-hand side, you'll see Valerie there with her booth talking about that. So do y'all have any questions? Y'all so quiet. And yes, what can I say?
Are they location specific? I mean, are you working through acupuncture?
They're not actually, and it has nothing to do with. Now the guy, and I'll give you, since I did sort of glean over some stuff, and I'm early, which is awesome, so I can tell you a little backstory. The engineer, CEO of Superpatch Company, his name is Jay Dollywall. That's actually who was supposed to be here talking to y'all tonight. But he had a prior engagement, and then y'all got the B team, unfortunately. He is a unique individual. He programs supercomputers for a living. He's a computer engineer. His mother developed multiple sclerosis, and when he was young, and he went with her to every single doctor's visit, and they kept saying that we don't know what caused it, and there's nothing you can do about it. And in his mind, if the brain seems to act like a computer, then they're saying that there's nothing we can do about it, we don't know, is not a true statement. You just haven't learned it yet. It's not that it doesn't exist. So he's been studying the neurologic literature for the last 40 years, but he's not a neuroscientist. And he does follow Eastern medicine because at first he thought, well, acupuncture, acupressure, very accurate ways of helping people. That's a distinct means by which physical therapy can intervene in physiology. So if you do Eastern medicine, you've seen that work. This is not that. The pattern has nothing to do with a reflexology pattern or anything to that effect whatsoever. He will not divulge how it is he figured out this pattern, but he bought 2 supercomputers. He purchased or made a huge donation to the European EEG Foundation for 2 million EEGs with all the medical background of all the EEGs, put them into a supercomputer to determine what was normal and what was aberrant. And so with the way he's programmed the computer, he's developed a 3-dimensional model that sees all the neurologic pathways for name the disease, name the physiology. He knows that pathway and he can see when it is abnormal. And so he was able to determine, and his company started with socks, and I happen to be wearing some of his socks right now. Those socks were designed specifically for balance, for MS. That's why he designed them for his mom. And then when this paper came out and said, it doesn't matter where you put it, it doesn't have to be on your feet like reflexology. It could be anywhere on your skin, is when he came up with a patch you can put anywhere. So that paper helped him launch kind of a patch company out of that. But the technology is targeted, and just like he can turn a pathway normal, he says there are patterns, truly, that can make the pattern worse. And the reason he'll never patent the technology or tell anybody how he does it is to keep it from going into these seats to make you more hungry. Or, in an arena to make you more angry. You can control people's emotions, their physiology, with tactile pressure, and he knows it. He says it's very dangerous technology, and so he'll never share it with anybody. So nobody really knows what it looks like. We just know that it's very targeted, and he will come and do demos from time to time with EEG using the proprietary software on you. And you can see what your brain looks like before, put a patch on you, you can see what your brain looks like when the patch is on. Take the patch off, you can see what it looks like when the patch comes off. And he's got a few videos like that on YouTube, actually, which are very interesting. A little spooky, a little worrisome, because in your clothing right now could be this pattern that just angers everybody. Yep.
We were at another seminar discussing the homeopathy, like how the longevity of like the herbal.
Yes.
Right. With this patch theory of it being tactile, is it a reaction for you up until, like you said, see how your brain reacts to as soon as you take the patch off? Is it immediate loss?
Yeah, so when it's not making contact with your skin, and we'll talk a little bit about this tomorrow, think in terms of, and all of us, I guess, probably in this room have studied and investigated things like meditation and biofeedback and neural feedback. These are operant conditioning models where what you're trying to do is put your brain into a parasympathetic state, because parasympathetic state is rest, digest, and healing. You want to be in a parasympathetic state. Modern life puts us in a sympathetic state. So you can learn how to meditate and you can do biofeedback. And the problem is the second you're no longer meditating, your brain goes back into sympathetic state. The beauty of these patches is you stick it and you forget it. And for 24 hours, you are in that parasympathetic state. So without you having to interact with the technology, you're there. So
like end? Like it runs
ultimately it will, yeah, because your body will not get used to it. But these patches, the texture is so fine with time, somewhere around 24 to 36 hours, even if it's well stuck to your skin, it's rubbed up against your skin enough where the texture's not quite making contact. And that entire pattern has to be firing off at the same time to make sure it's going to the right part of the brain. The second part of that pattern is missing. Part of that, if like the corner of the patch is lifted up, that can be enough to interrupt the entire signal. Again, it's like a QR code and you only got like 90% of it. You're not going to get to the website, So it is a little bit specific in that way. Brainstorming in the future, and I don't know if he's looking into it. If your body can feel it tactilely, then your body can also feel it with a light source, and it is very possible you could come up with a light-driven pattern that could do the same thing. I don't know if surely he's investigating that. But that's not out yet, but I suspect that's going to be in the future. And then that would be for as long as the battery is working, that is making contact as opposed to it wearing off. So that would be in my dream, and I've already asked him to invent it. And he said, ha, 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 ha. I said, we're working on it. So I don't know if he could ever get it to work. I don't know if the pattern would look the same. And I don't know how big of a light source would it take. Could it be something small? Would it have to be something big? Could you dial in all of the different pathways and just be green brain all the time? That's what I would want, total green brain, always. But anyway, right now that does not exist unless you're wearing all the patches. Thus, I'm wearing a whole bunch of them. Any other questions? Yes?
Really quick. So I'm an associate for superpatch.
Yeah.
I spent like 2 months researching it before I ever started working for him. But I
Yes.
tried like almost all the patches
Yes.
in that period of time. And I watched the videos. And
Yes.
different things like that. Super cool. But I've heard about the socks, and I want to know if you can get a pair of socks.
You can, except it's not through the Superpatch website. It's through Vox, VOXX.
So if I ask Val, she'll hook me up.
She could probably figure it out.
Okay.
It's no longer attached to actual like affiliate sales or whatnot. I think he disconnected all that. But
Some on eBay.
Oh, serious?
when I heard that he was going to kind of walk away from the sock, but when he was separating the two companies, because it used to be one company, then he separated it into two, I just bought a bunch of socks.
So the socks, are the design for the socks is
Liberty. It's going to be the Liberty patch
Okay.
on your feet.
Yeah. So like you can wear them all the time.
Ad infinitum, yes, you can. And that pattern never wears out.
Okay, cool. I totally want.
Yes, and so, but he had not yet mapped out all these different neurologic pathways when he was doing the socks.
Because that was first.
That was first, but the Canadian government made him stop. So he's Canadian, the company is Canadian. And they threatened him, which is why he moved all production to America. And then he started working with the 3M company. So these patches are made now by 3M. So they're super hypoallergenic and that sort of thing. So anyway, so it's an interesting, if you're a physician or chiropractor or practitioner of any sort, you may want to look into having a Health Pro account. It doesn't cost anything for physicians to own one, and that way you can offer them to your patients. So I have a little website that my patients go to buy their products. But
What happens when you wash the socks? Like what's in the socks?
it's knitted into the. Do you want to see what it looks like on the under? There's a little red patch. Do you see that red patch?
Okay.
Somewhere in that red patch on the inside is the texture.
And you can wash them in the washing machine.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now it's like how many years? I don't know. He has done a very interesting study, and it is on YouTube, of people wearing the socks, and EEG without the socks, all dorked up. EEG with the socks, you see the green. He made a group of people wear socks daily for a 2-year period of time, had them come in, like they wore them 24 hours a day, okay? Had them come in every 3 months and did the socks off, socks on, whatever. After 2 years, even with the socks off, the pathway was all green. And so that does sort of allude, doesn't prove, because the group was too small, it's not enough power, there wasn't placebo controlled, but that EEG study that alludes to the fact that you can reverse allostasis is hinted at in that video, small trial of 20 people or whatever. You can reverse some of these problems over an extraordinary length of time. It's just you cannot make that claim yet because it has not been studied yet. And I'll talk tomorrow night about a study that we're doing in our hospital to help patients mitigate fall risk after surgery. There's a lot of like placebo-controlled, double-blinded studies with this corporation, and because he's angling for this to be the first stop in the algorithm of mommy, I don't feel good, right? So anybody who doesn't feel well, this should be the first thing that comes out of the pharmacy drawer at the house before you even go to the doctor or anything. Just kind of like an aspirin or something like that should be that common. That's what I would like to see. Any other questions? Anybody? Yes, sir?
So there's some doctors in the school of thought that type 2 is largely caused by fat surrounding the pancreas. It's very hard. I mean, you have to go on an Auschwitz diet to get that fat to go away. And I think from my own research, I have type 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to fatty liver, which I also have fatty liver.
Of course you do. We all do.
And is there any of these patches that have been found to be effective in that?
Okay, so we're studying that, so stay tuned, and I'll give you the quick 411 on fatty liver and pancreas. So basically, all human disease can be traced to an aberration in the GI tract. There was a paper, and a lot of this study comes from the study of celiac disease, and there's a guy, and I wish I could remember his name, at Children's Hospital, Women's and Children's in Boston. There's a celiac foundation, and the main research gastroenterologist there discovered a molecule called zonulin, Z-O-N-U-L-I-N. Zonulin is a molecule your body naturally makes in the presence of inflammation. That inflammation can come primarily from gluten. That's how he found it, because of celiac patients. Comes from glyphosate, which, by the way, is everywhere. Comes from viral infection. COVID primarily causes a wicked zonulin response. And I don't know if any of you guys seen someone with colitis as a result of COVID or the vaccine. It's horrible. Artificial sweeteners, any kind of inflammatory molecule, your body will make zonulin. Zonulin is chemically related to cholera toxin. When your body is exposed to this toxin, it causes leaky gut. When you have leaky gut, then all of a sudden LPS, which is part of a bacterial cell wall, gram-negative cell walls make something called lipopolysaccharide, LPS, will leave the GI tract, go through the portal vein to your liver, and your body's response there is inflammation to that LPS, and that's what leads to fatty liver. Fatty liver is your first step. You had that before you had the fat pancreas issue. Okay, so fatty liver happens first, then that inflammation translocates again through the portal system and the digestive system to the pancreas. You can reverse that, by the way, and it doesn't necessarily take an Auschwitz diet. It takes a grain-free diet, and I might even dare say to limit American-grown fruits and veggies. And I know there's probably people in this room that are vegetarians that didn't like that I just said that. The problem is our soil is crap. So unless you're making it yourself, unless you're on a regenerative farm, which I guess that's becoming more popular. Californians probably have a lot of this. I don't know. In Texas, we don't. We're cattle people. But so a regenerative farm, no glyphosates, you can do those fruits and veggies. But what you're getting in the grocery store, even if it says organic, it's getting sprayed while it's sitting there on the little thingy with all kinds of chemicals. Those cause this inflammatory response, which are leading to your liver disease. And it's one of the reasons people swear they feel better on a carnivore diet, even though the human body requires the micronutrients in plants, right? So it's actually illogical that you'd be doing better on carnivore only, because you kind of need vitamins. So, but that's the kind of diet. Grain-free is going to be your first answer.
What's the best way to detect leaky gut? I know a company that's releasing a skin prick test for leaky gut.
They're probably looking for zonulin.
That's
They could be looking for gliadin. They're looking for either gliadin or zonulin. Those are the two that we typically will follow with leaky gut. And I, in my opinion, save your money. Everyone has leaky gut. If you have a medical illness, you got leaky gut. You don't need to be given $5,000 to a lab somewhere to determine that.
No, is it a real cheap skin, just a skin?
Yes.
It's
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it usually follows a physician who doesn't take insurance, who's taking your money, and I'm telling you right now, you have leaky gut, right? So if you've got type 2 diabetes, by definition, it started in your gut. If you have cancer, by definition, it started in your gut. So all human chronic illness starts with leaky gut, and that leaky gut starts with inflammation, and inflammation causes this molecule called zonulin, and that is probably what they're testing in your finger, if I had to make a guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I would say.
I take a lot of exotic probiotics,
Mm-hmm.
not just the pills, because I don't think they get completely down in all the way through
Mm-hmm.
the intestines. I do a lot of,
Fermented foods are awesome. Yeah.
yes.
I saw a great podcast of a microbiologist who said the number one best probiotic ever is the liquid on top of homemade sauerkraut.
Yeah, I do that.
That's like the best. It's gross. I mean, I know. I'm right there with you. Like, and I'm German, so I'm like, hell no to that. But that's okay. He said that is the number one.
Well, there's these Japanese herbs and vegetables that they ferment for a year
Yes.
that are
Kimchi kind of stuff. That's sauerkraut.
it's way beyond that. It's unbelievable. It's really pricey, but I've been experimenting with every kind of probiotic for years.
I would tell you to learn how to make it, man. Microbiology is fun. Of course, that is my training in my background.
Maybe
But
they make a super patch to allow you to consume this.
I will tell you this right now. So the University of Arizona is actually, I've been working with the University of Arizona in coming up with a microbiome balancing super patch. So that is actually being studied right now. And because the microbiology in your gut is communicating with the rest of your body at all times, and that is a two-way communication. So yeah.
Did you say that the patch helps the body on a regenerative level in areas that it might need?
Well, yes, to a degree. Now that distinctly has not been studied, so I would never make the claim, except I would say this. Your body regenerates when it's in parasympathetic homeostasis, and this patch puts you in parasympathetic homeostasis.
So a precursor, nonetheless, to get you.
Correct. And I'm a firm believer, because even as a surgeon, I like to cure people with an operation, but the operation alone is only part of the thing. The homework the patient has is they have to clean up their diet. It's by definition, they have to clean up their diet. And I'm a firm believer in anti-inflammatory things, whether it's NAC or turmeric or the methylene blue thing, or my patients know all of those things, and that's all awesome. But you have to be in parasympathetic homeostasis for any of those things to actually work. So if your patient is stressed out to the gills, they can take all the supplements the hell they want to. It's not going to work. This is part of the pathway. So in my opinion, none of these things that y'all are learning about in this conference are exclusive. They are all they work together, like a little team. So the brain has to have the foundational building blocks of a good nutrition, and the patient has to have this parasympathetic homeostasis for any of the nutritional stuff to work, if that makes sense. So, any other questions? Yay, okay, good. See, I like having a small group. I can answer questions. All right. You bet. And so tomorrow night we'll go over clinical pathways tomorrow night, and I'll answer a few more questions. And then I have to bolt for the airport tomorrow, so we'll try to finish early so I can answer questions.